She landed to silence. No "I miss you" text. No welcome message. No dog at the door. Have you ever come home and felt like a guest in your own life? Like you were interrupting something no one told you about? Avon Delaney had everything planned. The pitch, the flight, the win. But she didn't see this coming. So, what do you do? When your home feels colder than the airport terminal, stay quiet or burn the whole image down. Avon adjusted her wristwatch as the plane glided down toward Atlanta. Window shades lifted, the skyline flashed beneath the clouds, and the captain's voice droned through the intercom. Her fingers hovered over her phone. Still no message from Corin. 3 days. That's all it took. The biggest client she'd chased in years finally signed. Her boutique agency, once considered a side project, now had enough leverage to pitch with giants. She should have been on a high, but something kept tugging at her ribs. Something cold. She didn't text him either. Not anymore. The silence between them wasn't new. It had just become harder to ignore after wins like this. Wins that deserved celebration. That once got her wine and roses. Not anymore. The plane touched down. She opened her phone. No calls. No flowers notification. No voice note. Nothing. The car was waiting curbside. The driver, Malcolm, gave her that polite, tight-lipped smile. The kind you give someone you've seen cry in the back seat before. "Good trip, ma'am?" he asked, already taking her carry-on. "Productive," she replied. She slid into the back, leaned her head against the seat, and stared out the window. Atlanta buzzed outside. Traffic, storefronts, joggers. Life didn't stop for any one person's marriage to fall apart. 20 minutes later, they entered the estate gates. The trimmed hedges, polished brick entrance, and curved driveway looked exactly like the architectural magazine spread Corin had framed in his office. Too perfect. Too staged. But when Malcolm opened the door and Avon stepped out, the house didn't feel like home. It felt like a photo backdrop. No lights on, no music playing, no thud of feet rushing to greet her. Even her dog, Kix, a grey-haired Havanese she raised since grad school, didn't bark. She stepped inside. The house was spotless, cleaner than usual. Suspiciously so. The faint smell of lemon cleaner still clung to the kitchen. Avon wheeled her suitcase into the foyer and paused. Her shoes echoed too clearly against the marble. She walked to the kitchen. The dishwasher had run recently. The warmth of the cycle still clung to the edges. Then she saw it. A white ceramic mug. Red lipstick on the rim. Not hers. Not even her shade. She said nothing. Not out loud. She opened the fridge. It was stocked. Not by Corin. He didn't know where the yogurt went, much less restock sparkling water. Someone had been here. Not once. Not briefly. Frequently. In the guest bathroom, a towel still hung damp over the rack. Her brand of lotion had been moved from its usual spot, and the robe she'd left hanging on the inside door hook was gone. She stepped into the master bedroom and inhaled. Perfume. Soft. Floral. Expensive. Not hers. Avon didn't cry. She hadn't cried in months. Not when the birthday dinner got forgotten. Not when his assistant answered her call at 10:45 p.m. Not even when she overheard Corin telling someone on speaker, "We're just not that close anymore." Instead, she sat at the edge of the bed, pulled the leather-bound journal from her carry-on, and flipped to the next clean page. With steady hands, she wrote, "I'm done being the reason he looks respectable." Corin had been slipping for months. At first, it was the way he stopped checking in when she traveled. Then came the excuses. Long meetings, early golf, networking mixers, always at night, never with details. He never confessed to anything. Because men like Corin didn't confess. They managed optics. They handed you silence and expected you to fill in the blanks with denial. But Avon wasn't in denial. She was just waiting for the final thread to snap. Now, standing in the center of their cold, polished bedroom, she realized it already had. She wandered through the house, room by room. Everything looked fine, which was the problem. Nothing was ever messy unless she made it that way. Even chaos had to pass through Corin's filter. She stepped out into the backyard. No barking, no paws sprinting across the lawn. She opened the side gate, and there it was, an empty dog crate, gone. She texted Corin, "Where's Kix?" 10 minutes passed. Then a reply, "Took him to Mom's." You were gone. No explanation, no follow-up. Just a tone that said, "Don't overthink it." Avon stared at the screen, then locked the phone and walked back inside. She didn't call him. She didn't call his mother either. She already knew. She changed into loungewear, washed off the flight, tied her hair into a bun and studied herself in the mirror. Same woman. Same face that once made Corin turn his head at a conference 7 years ago. Same body he used to pull closer at 2 a.m. But her eyes, colder. Smarter. She looked like someone who'd learned that not every partner wants love. Some want a prop. And now, she was tired of performing. She didn't sleep that night. She didn't panic either. Instead, she pulled out her laptop and opened her project tracker. Her calendar was full of deals, decks, and deadlines. Everything except her marriage. At 2:13 a.m., she sent 3 emails. One to her legal advisor. One to her personal accountant. One to her executive assistant. Block off next Thursday night. I'll need the team for something important. No subject lines. No explanations. Just direction. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, Avon wasn't guessing what came next. She was choosing it. Corin didn't come home that night. His name never lit up her phone. No missed calls. No apology. Not even the decency of pretending to wonder if she made it in safely. By morning, the silence was permanent. Avon didn't pace. She didn't call him or text again. She moved like she'd already lived this moment and finally accepted it for what it was. She dressed. Simple blouse, neutral slacks, hair pulled back. She made tea in the kitchen like she always did. Except this time, she wasn't waiting for anyone to join her. She was waiting for what always came after silence. The consequence. She heard it at 9:41 a.m., a key turning in the front door. Then, heels, not her own. They were sharp, too confident for a guest, familiar with the floors. No hesitation in the step. Avon didn't turn. She lifted her cup, took a slow sip, and waited. Isla's voice came first. "Oh, I didn't know you'd be back so early." Avon finally turned. Isla stood there in an oversized cardigan, hair still wet from a morning shower that didn't happen, in her own home, holding Corin's favorite breakfast wrap from a bistro 5 blocks away. It took effort to look that effortless. Avon's tone was calm. "That makes 2 of us." Isla blinked, tried to smile. "Corin said you'd be gone till Monday. I moved things up." Isla nodded too fast. "Right, of course. It's just, I was coming to..." The tea kettle began to whistle. Avon turned back and cut the burner off, poured another cup. Quietly, Isla lingered by the doorway. She didn't leave. She didn't speak. She just stood there, caught between trying to save face and realizing the mirror had shattered. Because in their circle, people didn't confess. They hoped the wife stayed quiet. Avon wasn't loud. She didn't ask questions. She didn't accuse. She simply offered Isla a second mug from the cabinet and asked, "You take sugar?" Isla looked at her like she'd been slapped. "No, thank you. I was just heading out." "Of course," Avon said. "Corin should be home soon." Isla turned, then hesitated. "Are you okay?" "I'm always okay." That was the most honest answer Avon had given anyone in months. She cleaned the counter after Isla left, washed the cup Isla didn't use, and sent a text to her assistant. "We'll need to schedule the next board dinner. Make sure the list excludes Corin and anyone under his retainer." The reply came back in 2 minutes. "Understood." Later that day, Corin texted. "Caught up. Be home late." "Everything good?" Avon didn't answer. That night, she lit a candle in the living room. Not the luxury ones he liked, the overly masculine scents with names like Blackstone or Arctic Leather. No, She picked the lavender soy blend she used to burn when she lived alone. She sat in silence. No TV, no music, just air. It felt heavier in the house now, not because she'd found proof, but because she finally accepted there was nothing left worth saving. She wasn't broken. She was adjusting. She lay in bed alone that night, slept lightly, listened to every creak and wind rush. When Corin came home after midnight, he didn't check on her. He went straight to the guest room and closed the door. By morning, he was gone again. She made toast, ate in the breakfast nook overlooking the backyard. Kix's crate still hadn't returned. Her phone buzzed with a charity event reminder. She'd agreed to it months ago. A foundation gala honoring small business contributions. Corin would be honored. She would stand next to him. Again. Public harmony. Private fracture. Avon leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. She could fake it one more time. But after that, no more. That weekend, she wore a navy dress that made her skin glow under stage lights. She stood tall beside Corin, who held her hand just tight enough for the cameras. People smiled at them like they were carved from magazine covers. Old money elegance. Quiet power couple. Dorel Valmere, Corin's mother, greeted them near the press entrance with a kiss on Avon's cheek and a dagger in her voice. "You both looked stunning in the Chronicle," she said. "Keep it up." "There are whispers already." Avon smiled politely. "Wouldn't want to disappoint the whispers." Dorel narrowed her eyes. "You know how quickly reputations can shift. One headline can stain everything." Avon leaned in slightly. "Then I'd suggest your son stop handing people ink." Dorel's jaw clenched, but she smiled for the cameras, like all well-trained society mothers did. Corin didn't notice the exchange. He was too busy telling a group of donors about his next digital platform. Avon stayed close, but inside she was stepping further away. The awards presentation was predictable. Corin thanked his team, thanked his wife, looked at her like she was a prop he couldn't afford to replace yet. When they got home, she went straight to bed. Didn't wait for him to ask anything. He didn't. Sunday passed in silence. She read, filed her nails, moved 2 accounts out of their shared portfolio. When Tuesday came, she woke early and made breakfast. Real breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh orange juice, coffee the way Corin liked it, double strong with a splash of cream. She set the table for 2. Corin came down the stairs and stopped mid-step. "You cooked?" "I did." He walked over slowly, sat down, ate, looked around, slightly confused but not concerned. "Everything okay?" "Why wouldn't it be?" He shrugged. "Just, you don't usually do this." She smiled. "I used to." "You stopped noticing." He looked down at his plate. Midway through the meal, he cleared his throat. "We should start planning for the awards ceremony next month. I'm presenting, and they want us seated near the city reps." Avon reached into her bag beside her chair, pulled out a thick white envelope, placed it beside his plate. Corin looked at it, then looked at her. "What's this?" "Read it." He opened it, flipped through. The color drained from his face. "You're serious?" Avon sipped her coffee. "Do I look like I'm joking?" He stood. "You want to ruin everything now? After all we've built?" She didn't raise her voice. "I'm not your image consultant, Corin. I'm your wife. Or I was." He stepped back, like her words had physical weight. "You realize what this looks like? What this will do to both our names?" "You built a name," she said. "I built a life, and I'm taking mine back." He stared at her for a long time, then left the room without another word. When she heard the front door close, she cleaned the table. Carefully, calmly, like a woman who'd stopped reacting and started responding. She wasn't going to fight for a place at a table where she was only ever used as decoration. She wasn't going to fix something that only looked intact in photos. And she wasn't going to protect his image anymore. She was going to rebuild her own. From the ground up. And, this time, she'd sit at the head. Avon always noticed patterns. That's what made her good at her job. Brand behavior, consumer habits, audience shifts. Everything followed a rhythm if you looked close enough. Corin had a pattern too. Distance, denial, distraction. Lately, his distraction wore perfume. It wasn't the first time she suspected Isla. The way Corin leaned in too close during brunches, the soft shoulder touches, the laugh Isla saved just for him, slightly louder, slightly delayed, enough to be harmless in public but obvious in private. What changed now was that Avon no longer cared to decode it. She just accepted it. And that kind of peace was dangerous for someone like Corin. At exactly 9:03 a.m. the next morning, Avon heard the front door click open again. She was already in the kitchen, fully dressed, tea in hand. The same click of heels on tile followed. This time, slower, more hesitant. Isla appeared in the doorway again. But today, she wore gym leggings and a tank, hair up in a bun, sunglasses still on. She paused when she saw Avon. "Oh, you're home." Avon sipped her tea. "Seems I still am." Isla hovered, keys dangling in hand. "I didn't think," Corin said. She paused, flustered. "I was just dropping off something." "For him?" "Yes." "A laptop he left at my place." Avon raised an eyebrow. "Your place?" Isla blinked. She wasn't used to being caught. Not this directly. Not without warning. She held out the device like a shield. "It's nothing weird. He came by last night to fix something in the guest room and left this." "You mean the guest room here?" "In my house." Isla's lips parted, then closed. Avon stepped forward, still calm. "How long?" "What? How long has it been going on?" Isla fidgeted. It's complicated." "No, it's actually not. It's simple. A married man, a woman who knew him through his wife. That's about as clear as it gets." Isla crossed her arms. "He said things weren't good between you two. He said—" "I'm sure he said a lot." Avon tilted her head, voice steady. "Did he also say I bought this house? That I paid the first down payment from my agency earnings before he ever earned his first client?" Isla didn't answer. "He won't leave you," Avon continued. "He won't choose you, because you're convenient, not costly. He doesn't respect the women he uses. He pities them." "That's not fair," Isla snapped. "It's accurate." Avon walked past her, took the laptop, and placed it on the table. "You're excused." Isla hesitated again. "I didn't mean. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." Avon didn't respond. She just opened her phone, typed a note, and walked away. Isla lingered. One step too far in, one decision too late. Eventually, the front door closed. Avon exhaled, not in relief, in resolve. She stood at the edge of her life and knew she wasn't walking back to who she was. She was walking forward, away. Later that day, she took the same laptop Isla delivered and scrolled through the files. Corin's personal folders were never locked. He didn't believe in passwords she couldn't crack. That was the part he forgot. She used to run the admin systems for his early businesses. She taught his assistants how to archive. She knew every folder structure. She clicked open one marked campaign materials. Inside it, invoices, private messages. One from Isla, dated 2 weeks ago. "Your mother said we should go public after the awards. She wants it clean. She said Avon won't react publicly." Avon stared at the message, not shocked, just affirmed. Dorel always did prefer whispers over war. Avon closed the file. She didn't need more proof. She needed a plan. By evening, she changed her locks. Corin had his own keys, but not to every room anymore. She called a locksmith, stayed in the kitchen while he worked, and tipped him double when he left. Then she called her lawyer. "I want to file quietly. No media, no leaks. I'll let him know before the paperwork hits." The woman on the other end didn't ask why. She'd worked with Avon before. She knew the tone. This wasn't rage. It was reason. That weekend, Corin pretended nothing happened. He came home late again, pecked her cheek, talked about the foundation gala. She nodded, played the role. He told her she looked tired. She smiled and said, "Travel." He asked if she could wear the navy dress for the event. She said, Already planned. That Saturday, they pulled up together to the venue. Cameras flashed. People clapped. Avon smiled and smiled, until her cheeks hurt. Inside the ballroom, everything glittered. People sipped champagne, whispered about elections, posted their outfits online. Avon moved between conversations like a pro. No missteps, no awkward moments. Dorel approached with a drink and a compliment wrapped in warning. "You look lovely tonight. You look like you're preparing for a statement," Avon replied. Dorel stiffened. "We all make sacrifices to keep things elegant." Avon took the glass and held it up. "Then let's toast. To clean exits." Dorel's eyes narrowed. "You're not the only one with reputation at stake." Avon leaned in. "Exactly why I won't make this messy." She walked away before Dorel could respond. The rest of the evening played like theatre. Corin gave his speech, praised innovation, family, partnership. When he said, "And to my wife, who's stood by me since day one," a few people turned to look at Avon. She smiled. But her eyes were gone. At home that night, Avon didn't speak to him. She went to bed early, slept like she hadn't in months. Because now, she wasn't guessing. She was setting the match. The next morning, her assistant texted, "All confirmations in place. Dinner Thursday. Final guest list sent." Avon replied, "Good. Make sure they know it's private." She sat back, sipping her tea, and looked at the invite her assistant had sent out. "Avon Delaney invites you to an exclusive thank you dinner. Celebration of growth. Intimate gathering. No plus ones. No Corin. No Dorel. No Ila. Only those who mattered and those who helped her build." It would be the last dinner she hosted as Mrs. Valmere, and the first one where she'd speak not as a wife, but as herself. Thursday arrived quiet. No storm. No drama. Just the kind of weather that made people wear linen and smile like they weren't holding secrets. Avon stood in her walk-in closet, slipping into a sleek black dress that spoke louder than anything she could have posted online. Minimal jewelry, simple makeup, hair low and sharp. Every detail was intentional. She looked in the mirror and didn't smile. She didn't need to. Tonight wasn't about warmth. It was about witness. She stepped into heels and walked out like she was walking toward the rest of her life, not away from her past. The dining room had been reset earlier that day, florals but not extravagant, soft jazz humming in the background, catering staff stationed discreetly in the kitchen, everything clean, sharp. At 7:02 p.m. the doorbell rang. The first guest. By 7:45 the room was full. 12 people sat around the table. Founders, editors, design leads and brand partners. People who mattered. People who knew how to keep a secret, and more importantly, people who knew how to spread one when it was time. They laughed. 8. One of the editors asked about Avon's recent trip. "It went better than expected," she said. "A clean pitch, good alignment. More than just the numbers." Another guest leaned in. "Sounds like the start of something new." She nodded. "It is." By the second course, everyone was comfortable. Corin's name didn't come up, not once, and that was the first sign the shift had already begun. At 8:20, Avon stood. The room. Her hand held a champagne flute, but she didn't raise it. She simply looked at each person. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I won't take much of your time, but I owe you a few things. Clarity, for one. Chairs adjusted, eyes focused." She continued, "You've known me in many forms, consultant, partner, strategist, fixer, and sometimes the person who calms the storm before a press release." Smiles around the room. "But I've made a decision." Avon walked slowly toward the head of the table. "Effective next quarter, the firm will be relocating. Austin, Texas." A few gasps. A fork dropped. A couple exchanged glances. She didn't flinch. "I've accepted a buyout offer from a firm that understands the value of peace and process. They're smaller, more deliberate. I'll be working closely with them on 3 transition projects." Someone asked, "Does Corin know?" Avon met that gaze directly. He'll find out tomorrow morning. Silence. Someone tried to laugh but stopped midway. Avon set her glass down. This isn't about revenge. This is about redirection. I'm no longer interested in maintaining a version of life that only looks good in photos. Someone muttered, "Damn." Avon smiled faintly. There's a difference between building a name and building a life. I've done both. Now I'm choosing the one that gives me peace. There were no questions after that, just quiet awe. That kind of silence only power brings, not the loud kind, not the one that demands attention, the kind that resets rooms. After dessert, people lingered. Hushed voices, low admiration. No one brought up Corin again. No one had to. They already understood. The next day, the whisper cycle would begin, not from her mouth, but from the mouths of those who now had the story. Not scandal, not gossip, just the truth, and the tone that came with it. Avon didn't stay to linger. She thanked everyone with a brief smile, walked into the kitchen, took off her heels. The caterers began to clean. She stepped into her study, pulled up the last draft of the final transition contract, and clicked send. Done. Corin walked in at 11:40 p.m., loosened tie, same cologne. He didn't ask about the dinner. He didn't notice the subtle shift in the lighting or the way her desk no longer held their shared calendar. He kissed her forehead and said, "You look tired." She smiled. "It's been a long week." He opened the fridge. "Is there anything left from tonight?" "Nothing you'd want." He chuckled. "Fair." Then he walked upstairs like everything was fine, like he still had time, like he still had her. By morning, the email hit. Corin's phone buzzed at 8:02. Avon watched him read it from the patio. He stared for a long time, didn't move, didn't blink. Then he walked back in, quiet, held the phone out. "You're leaving?" "I already left." He blinked. "You sold your stake?" "No. I leveraged it." "What does that mean?" "It means I built the company, and now I'm taking the soul of it with me. You can have the logo. I have the people." Corin swallowed hard. "You planned this?" "For months." He sat down, stared at the floor. "You really don't care about any of this anymore?" "I do. Just not in the way that protects your reputation." His hands fidgeted. "Isla said you wouldn't react publicly." "I'm not. But you're walking away." "Yes." He laughed once. Bitter. "You're going to make me look weak." "No," Avon said, rising. "You did that all by yourself." She left the room before he could say anything else, left him staring at the remains of the life he tried to control. And when the door shut behind her, it stayed shut. Avon drove herself to a private office suite on the east side of town. The building was quiet, clean, no flash, no pretense, just space. Cale was already waiting inside the lobby, no tie, sleeves rolled, his presence calm as ever. She walked up. He didn't ask how she was. He just looked at her and said, "Well?" She exhaled. "It's done." Cale nodded. "Good." They walked together to the elevator. No words. None needed. Avon didn't need fixing. She just needed someone who didn't treat her power like a threat. Later that night, as she stood on the balcony of her temporary apartment, Avon scrolled past a news headline. Power couple splits quietly after major deal, no names. No drama, no mention of her dinner, which meant she'd done it right. She set her wine glass on the railing and typed a quick message. "Dinner again?" Seconds later, Cale replied, "Always." She locked her phone, closed her eyes, and let the air move around her freely for the first time in years. She didn't post a quote. She didn't cry. She didn't look back. Because walking away wasn't the hard part. Staying silent while they thought they still had her, that was the real act of power. Now, she was finally done protecting the lie. If you've ever walked away from something that looked perfect on the outside but felt empty on the inside, this story is for you. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw, and powerful stories from Mr. Charles Stories. Avon had always been good at red carpet events. Smile soft, eyes focused. Walk 3 steps, pause. Angle the body slightly to the left. It photographed better. Respond to praise with grace, never overconfidence. Mention your partner. Say the brand name. Blend strength with femininity. Corin liked when she wore navy. He said it made her look like royalty, polished but never intimidating. So she wore navy. Not for him. For the illusion. Let them think they were fine. Let them snap their photos. Let them caption it. #goals. This would be the last time she walked beside him without the world knowing what had already shattered. The valet opened the door. Avon stepped out first, heels silent on the carpet, posture flawless. The cameras popped. Blinding lights. Familiar chaos. Corin followed, buttoning his jacket with a practiced nod at the press. They didn't touch. Not until they reached the step and repeat. There. He slid his hand gently to the small of her back, smiling for the cameras like a man who'd just donated 10 million to save a library. Smile, he murmured under his breath. I always do, she replied. Flash, flash, flash. Someone shouted her name. Avon, how do you two keep the spark alive? She turned slightly, met the camera directly. Stay busy, stay quiet, stay unexpected. Flash. Corin laughed beside her, but it was stiff. She knew that laugh. So did the reporters, but none of them would say anything. Not yet. Not until the story had blood. And she had no intention of bleeding for them. Inside the ballroom, everything glittered. String music played above polite conversation. Champagne flutes clinked. Women in satin gowns floated between senators and socialites. Waiters moved like ghosts, refilling glasses before they emptied. Corin leaned in and whispered, We'll need to shake hands with the Bernsons first. He's writing a feature on next-gen tech funds. Avon nodded. You handle that. I'll greet the magazine table. They split like trained dancers, never too far apart. Always visible. Their choreography had been perfected through years of mutual ambition. That's what most people missed. Theirs had never been a love story. It was a power alliance, until Avon stopped being interested in power that came at the cost of her peace. Dorel found her first. Clutch in hand, drink already half gone, posture taut as ever. You look radiant, she said. Thank you, Avon replied smoothly. Dorel leaned closer. Your skin glows when you pretend everything's fine. Avon's smile didn't waver. Pretending is in our blood, isn't it? Corin mentioned dinner. Said you've been reconnecting. Avon took a slow sip of water. I'm always reconnecting with myself. Dorel's eyes sharpened. There are whispers. I'm hearing things. You've always heard things, Avon said softly. But you only ever care when they might reflect badly on you. Dorel stepped back, tone tight. You're playing a dangerous game. No, Avon said. I'm ending one. The award segment began around 8 p.m. Corin was the third to speak. Avon sat at the designated table, surrounded by familiar names and unfamiliar glances. She could feel them watching her as Corin walked to the stage. He was good at this, charming, polished, script memorized. I want to thank the foundation, my team, and most of all, my wife, Avon. The woman who stood beside me since day one. Polite applause. Avon tilted her head, smiled. Let them believe it. Let them cling to their fairy tales. She wouldn't embarrass him here. But this was the last lie she'd protect in public. After the speech, someone leaned over and whispered, You two still look so in sync. I admire that. Avon smiled. Some things are better performed than lived. The woman blinked. Not sure if it was a joke. It wasn't. The dinner ended with handshakes and laughter. Avon held her clutch tight, thanked the hosts, and posed for one last photo. In the car, silence stretched between them. Corin finally spoke. You were amazing tonight. She nodded. Seriously, he said. Everyone noticed. The editors loved your speech notes. Dorel even said you looked stronger than ever. Avon turned to the window. That's what grief does. He frowned. What grief? She looked at him, voice soft. The grief of loving someone who never noticed when they stopped loving you back. Corin didn't answer. He didn't know how, and Avon didn't give him space to recover. When they reached home, she went straight to the guest room and locked the door. He didn't follow. He didn't knock. He didn't sleep in the same bed. Because deep down, he knew. She wasn't bluffing. She wasn't punishing him. She was closing the book. The next morning, a bouquet of white tulips waited on the counter. No card, no name. Corin was already gone. Avon dropped them in the trash without a second thought. He thought it was about apology. He still didn't realize it was about dignity. He'd lost hers. And she was finally done losing herself. Corin didn't come home that night. He texted around 6 p.m., running behind. Dinner with potential clients. Don't wait up. She didn't reply. She didn't even read it past the preview bubble. Because she wasn't waiting. Not anymore. Instead, she called a driver and headed to her downtown office. She had paperwork to finalize, a few digital contracts to move, and one last board member to meet quietly over wine. The walls of the Valmere home no longer mattered. That house had served its purpose. Now it was just a stage with peeling paint. At the office, her assistant met her at the elevator, holding a folder. Everything's ready. They're expecting you on 9. Avon nodded. And Cale? He already signed. Her assistant paused. You sure about moving forward with him? I'm not moving forward with him, Avon replied. I'm moving forward near him. The woman smiled faintly. Subtle difference. A necessary one. The conference room was sleek, minimal. Cale sat at the end of the table, dark shirt, sleeves rolled, calm expression. His presence never overwhelmed. It grounded. He stood as she entered. No drama. Miss Delaney. She smirked. We're doing titles now. He gestured toward the seat beside him. For this, we should... She sat. Pulled the folder close. Inside was the transition agreement. The official confirmation of her buyout. Avon's firm would be absorbed into Cale's boutique venture group, keeping her brand identity intact. Her team, her culture, her values. His backing. Everything she wanted. Nothing she didn't. No spotlight. No PR tour. Just progress. She flipped to the last page, clicked her pen, and signed. Cale watched but didn't speak. When she finished, she looked up. Well, he leaned back. You ever think about how quiet power is? Every day. No speeches, no shouting. Just this. He folded his arms, voice soft. You didn't burn the house down. You walked out and bought the land next to it. She smiled. Corin never thought I'd go, because he confused silence with surrender. They sat for a moment, the hum of city lights filling the room. Then she stood. Let's get dinner. The restaurant was low-key. No cameras. No influencers. Real napkins and good bread. They sat near the window, not touching. No assumptions. Just two people breathing easier than they had in months. Cale didn't ask about Corin. He didn't ask about Dorel or Isla. He asked about her childhood dog. Your assistant said you used to have a Havanese. Kix. He's with Dorel now. You trust her. I trust Kix to give her a hard time. Cale chuckled. You miss him? She nodded. But not enough to stay miserable. There it was. Simple truth. No tears. No cracked voice. Just honesty. He tilted his head. You're not scared? Of what? Starting over. Being labeled. She sipped her wine. I've been labeled since the day I out-earned Corin. Too sharp. Too serious. Too successful. Now I'll just be labeled free. He smiled, not with pity, with admiration, and that made all the difference. By the time she returned home, it was after midnight. The house was dark again. She walked in quietly, heels in hand, coat over her arm. Corin was on the couch, half asleep, TV humming low. He sat up when he heard her. You're back late. I didn't think you'd care. I care, he said. About me or the image? He didn't answer. She walked past him toward the stairs. He followed. Where were you? Someplace I didn't have to shrink. He rubbed his face. Is this about the gala? This is about everything. He exhaled. Look, I messed up. But don't throw it all away for one mistake. Avon turned. You didn't make one mistake. You lived in one. He took a step closer. We built something, Avon. Our names, our brand. It means something. She looked him in the eye. And what does it cost? Silence. She kept walking. That weekend, the magazine cover dropped. A glossy shot from the gala. Corin and Avon, smiling side by side. The headline, Power, Grace, Legacy. The Valmer's next chapter. It was already outdated. But they didn't know that. Avon flipped through it once, tossed it on the kitchen counter. She didn't correct it. She didn't repost it. She didn't need to, because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is walk away and let them guess. She spent the rest of Sunday cleaning her office at home. Every drawer, every file. She found old notes from her early pitch decks, ones Corin said were too ambitious. Found her first notebook from when the agency launched, filled with messy ideas and dreams she nearly forgot. She boxed them all. Every piece of herself she buried to protect someone else's comfort. By dusk, the guest room looked like a studio. Her things, her space, no more pretending. She didn't leave with drama. She didn't scream in the driveway. She left with a new lease, a new firm, and a team that chose her when it counted. Corin still didn't understand, but that wasn't her problem anymore. Tuesday morning. The air in the house was heavy, not loud. Still. Avon rose before the sun and showered slowly, not because she had somewhere to be, but because she needed stillness before the shift from being his wife to being herself. She tied her robe, walked barefoot into the kitchen, and opened the windows. Let the morning air in. The sky was orange and honest. It didn't care who stayed or left. She opened the fridge, pulled out eggs, spinach, and bread, set 2 plates, 2 mugs, not for love, for closure. Corin liked his toast dark. Coffee double strong, splash of cream. She prepared it exactly that way, not out of kindness, but precision. If anyone ever said she blindsided him, they'd be wrong. She gave him everything, even the ending he didn't deserve. By 7:45, the table was set. Avon wore a simple cream blouse and loose slacks. No jewelry, no perfume, just clarity. Corin came down at 8:10, still in his gym shirt, checking his phone. He stopped when he saw the table. You cooked? I did. He pulled out a chair and sat cautiously. You didn't say anything. I don't always have to. He picked up his fork, chewed slowly. This is really good. He sipped the coffee. Wow. Haven't had this in a while. You remembered? I always remembered. They ate in silence. Then Corin leaned back and wiped his mouth. We should start prepping for the awards ceremony. I need your notes for the business feature by Friday. Avon reached into the envelope beside her chair and slid it across the table. He stared at it. What's this? Read it. He opened it slowly. 2 pages. 1 line. Then 10 more lines. Then a signature. His breath caught. He looked up, but Avon was still sipping her coffee. You're serious? She didn't flinch. I don't do things halfway. His voice dropped. You want to ruin everything now. I want to stop being a prop in your performance. He scoffed. We built a name. People. You built a name, she said. I built a life. And you're not in it anymore. Corin pushed his plate back. So this is it? No discussion, just boom. I gave you discussion. For years. You gave me distance. He stood. You want the world to see us crash? No. I want the world to see me walk out with grace. He blinked. Isla won't. She interrupted him. Don't talk to me about Isla. You gave my silence to her like it was yours to offer. He dropped back into his chair, shaken. Avon stood. You won't need to play the loving husband anymore. The cameras can't force you to fake that. He rubbed his face. You know what people are going to say? I know what I'll say, she replied. Nothing. Let them guess. She walked away. He didn't follow. He never did when it mattered. Avon called her assistant as she walked upstairs. Move the dinner to Thursday. Make it private. No press leaks. Confirmed, and have the new logo file sent to the printers. We'll unveil during the event. You got it? Good. It's time. She hung up and looked at the house around her. The framed magazine covers. The crystal vases. The photo on the hallway wall. Corin's hand around her waist, her smile tight and polished. She reached up and pulled the frame down, laid it flat on a shelf, face down. Let the glass feel its own weight. No more image, just intention. Later that day, Corin tried to talk again. Waited until she was reviewing transition documents on the patio. He hovered. I don't want to lose what we have. She didn't look up. You already did. You're being cold. I'm being clear. He swallowed hard. So what now? You pack up? Walk out? Make me the villain? You're not the villain. You're the consequence. That stopped him. He stood there, unsure whether to fight or retreat. She didn't give him a cue. Just turned the page of her document and kept reading. The next morning, she boxed up the last of her things, her design notebooks, original mock-ups, and client letters. None of Corin's stuff. She didn't touch his space. She only took what belonged to her. And that list was longer than he expected. Her old camera, the Bluetooth speaker from her dorm days, the brown ceramic mug she used before they ever had money. She left behind the things he gifted her to buy peace. None of them had real value. By noon, she sent the final staff memo. Effective Friday, Delaney and Company will shift operations to our new headquarters in Austin. Team leads have been informed. If you're receiving this, it's because you are part of what's next. Welcome home. The replies flooded in. All of them read the same between the lines. We've been waiting for this. And so had she. Back at the house, Corin stood at the top of the stairs watching her zip up a suitcase. You're really going to do this? I already did. You're stronger than I thought. I always was. He paused. I didn't think you'd walk. She looked him in the eye. That's the problem. You never saw me as someone who could. And with that, she wheeled the suitcase down the hall, through the front door, and into the car waiting in the driveway. No slam, no screaming, no announcement, just her, moving forward, quietly. Finally, the drive to the new place wasn't long, but it felt like crossing a country. Every turn took her further from the curated lies of the estate and closer to something honest, something unpolished, something hers. The apartment in Midtown wasn't flashy. It had clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and silence that felt earned, not forced. She stood in the entryway for a few seconds before moving in. No decorator, no fanfare, no Corin. She rolled her suitcase to the wall and exhaled. It didn't feel like starting over. It felt like starting real. By afternoon, movers arrived with boxes she'd packed in advance. Not everything, just the essentials. She let go of the showpieces. She kept the soul, old books, original sketch pads, her grandfather's watch, a crooked mug with her agency's first logo, misprinted, faded, precious. She unwrapped a small framed photo of herself on a panel 4 years ago, standing tall, surrounded by men in suits. She'd forgotten that woman. Now she'd become her again. That evening, her assistant texted, "Dinner prep confirmed. All guests on board. Quiet RSVPs only." Avon replied, "Perfect. No Corin, no Dorell, no noise." The guest list was short. Founders, editors, quiet power players, people who didn't need to be convinced, only informed. And they would be. Not with a press release, with presence. At 8:10 p.m., she got a call from Dorell. She let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then picked up. "I expected better," Dorell said without greeting. "You usually expect obedience. You blindsided him. I gave him more warning than most women get in a lifetime." Dorell hissed, "You're throwing away years of work." "No, I'm throwing away years of pretending. There's a difference. Corin needs you. No. He needs someone to pretend he still looks good standing next to them. That's not love. That's marketing. You're angry. I'm clear. Silence. Then Dorell's final jab. You've embarrassed the family. Avon didn't raise her voice. He embarrassed himself. She ended the call. No goodbye. Just the truth. She walked to her window and looked out over the skyline. The air felt different. Not cleaner, but unfiltered. She poured a glass of red wine and sent a message to Cale. "We're good for Thursday?" He replied instantly. Always. That was it. No grand gesture. No demand. Just quiet assurance. She needed that more than anything. On Wednesday, Corin emailed. The subject line was blank. The message read, "You've made your point. Let's do this quietly. We can both protect what matters." She stared at the screen. He still thought her leaving was about teaching him a lesson. Still thought she was trying to negotiate from emotion. She didn't reply. Because silence was no longer her cage. It was her decision. Thursday arrived calm. No photographers outside. No Dorell. No gossip. Just 12 chairs. One long table. And her name, not his, on every conversation. Avon arrived early, checked the layout, and made sure the media packets were sealed. She looked flawless, but didn't try to. She didn't wear navy. She wore white, because this wasn't mourning. This was movement. By 7:15 p.m., the room was full. People who built things without needing applause. The kinds of people who noticed who wasn't in the room and understood immediately. Avon raised a glass. "Thank you for coming." No speech. No long story. Just control. One of the editors smiled. "We figured something big was happening." She nodded. "It is." Another guest leaned forward. "And Corin?" Avon held eye contact. "He's not part of what's next." That was all they needed. They understood. They would carry it forward, not as gossip, but as a quiet shift in respect. The wife had left the stage. The woman took the mic. By 9, the night had settled. People laughed, talked. No one asked too many questions. They didn't need to. Her absence from the estate, from Corin's orbit, from the lie, was enough. She didn't owe explanations. She owed herself peace. After the last guest left, she stood at the window again. Cale approached from behind. "You okay?" "I'm better." He handed her a drink. "They respect you more now." "I didn't do it for respect." "I know. That's why it worked." They didn't toast. They just stood there. Two people who had nothing to prove and everything to rebuild, on their own terms. Back at the estate, Corin sat in his study, refreshing his email. No message from Avon. He scrolled his photo albums, deleted old videos, reposted one throwback. The caption, "Growth isn't linear, but legacy lasts." No tags, no mention of her. He didn't say the truth. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Because Avon didn't ruin his image. She just stopped protecting it. The morning after her private dinner, the news hadn't broken. Not the real news. Not her move. Not the separation. Not the relocation. All that floated online were blurry photos from last week's gala, speculation about her dress designer, and recycled headlines calling her Mrs. Valmere. She didn't correct any of it. Let them think what they wanted, until they couldn't. Avon didn't believe in drama. She believed in documentation. And by Friday, the paperwork was in motion. Delaney and Company was no longer tethered to Atlanta. Her business accounts were frozen, transferred, and revived under new terms. Her design and branding team had already begun the firm's visual reintroduction. The only thing she hadn't done was speak publicly. That was by design. She wasn't launching a defense. She was unveiling a direction. And tonight? She'd show it. The restaurant was discreet. Private room. No press access. No photographers. Only 15 people. All carefully selected. Clients, advisors, creative directors. One tech editor with a powerful network. These weren't friends. They were witnesses. And Avon knew, When you want to change the story, you don't write a post. You curate a room. She arrived 10 minutes early. White dress, minimal jewelry, hair in a low bun. Confidence without announcement. The host greeted her like she was royalty. Inside, the room was elegant. Round table, soft lighting, floral scent in the air. Avon walked to the seat at the center and placed her phone face down. She wasn't here to react. She was here to anchor. At 7 sharp, the guests began arriving. Light hugs, quick air kisses, small talk about fall campaigns, investment funds, whispers of upcoming tech launches. Everyone knew something was brewing. They were just waiting for confirmation. Avon gave them none. Not yet. They reached the main course. Conversation slowed. That's when Avon stood. "I won't take too much of your time," she said, voice soft but sharp. "I just wanted to thank you all for being part of what's next." Chairs shifted slightly. She continued, "The firm is moving to Austin. We've accepted a quiet acquisition that lets us keep our integrity, but shed unnecessary weight." A few guests looked up sharply. She smiled. "Corin won't be coming." Silence. "But this isn't about divorce, or headlines, or whispers." She leaned forward slightly. "This is about alignment. The brand I built was suffocating in a structure that no longer served it. I chose to leave. Not for scandal, but for sanity." Someone nodded slowly. Another murmured. Finally, Avon let the silence breathe before finishing. "If you're in this room, it's because you're part of what I'm building next. We're scaling differently, leading quietly, and I don't need applause. I need execution." No one clapped. They didn't need to. They understood. That moment changed everything. One editor, a woman known for her viral columns, leaned across the table. "If you ever decide to tell your story officially, I'd be honored to ghostwrite it." Avon smiled politely. "Let them fill in the blanks." The woman laughed. "They will." "I know," Avon said, "and I'm giving them just enough to be interesting, but never enough to be sure." After dessert, Avon thanked each guest one by one. No big exit, no press kit, no selfie moment, just a nod, a quiet hand on the shoulder, a parting line, "We'll be in touch." Then she slipped out the back. Outside, Cale was waiting in his car, leaned casually against the passenger side door. He didn't ask how it went. He didn't need to. She smiled as she approached. He opened the door for her. "You're building something dangerous," he said as she got in. "Not dangerous," she replied. "Untouchable." Back at the estate, Corin scrolled Instagram, photos from other people's nights, clues he hadn't been invited, comments under a tagged event location he recognized. No one messaged him directly, but he saw the pattern. They'd moved on, not from him, from needing him. At midnight, Dorell called. He didn't pick up, not because he was busy, but because he didn't have an answer. For the first time, he wasn't in control of the message. Avon didn't need revenge. She didn't even need credit. She had something more valuable: respect. Avon didn't return to the estate after the dinner. She went straight to her new place. No suitcase, no statement. She didn't even text anyone good night. She opened the window, let the fall air in, and sat on the couch with her legs curled under her. The night didn't feel victorious. It felt quiet. And that was the point. She wasn't chasing freedom like a prize. She was holding it like oxygen. The next morning, she opened her phone to headlines. Not about her, about Corin. Tech strategist quietly removed from board role following internal review. She smiled faintly. She hadn't done it. She hadn't needed to. Once her name stepped away, others followed. Clients questioned his ethics. Partners hesitated to renew contracts. Not because she called them, but because her absence spoke louder than her defense ever could. When you're the credibility, your silence becomes the scandal. By noon, Corin texted, "Can we talk?" She stared at it, typed nothing, deleted the thread. Meanwhile, her agency's announcement hit quietly online. New branding, new team photo, new headquarters location. No mention of Corin, no co-founder title under his name. The caption read, "Still creative, still strategic." Now unfiltered. Thousands liked it. Dozens of clients reshared it. Her inbox flooded. People weren't shocked. They were relieved. They'd been waiting for the shift. All she had to do was make it. At 3 p.m., a package arrived at her apartment. No note, just a small leather journal. Her old one. The one Corin once made fun of. Said it made her look like a therapist. Now he was returning it. She opened it and found a sticky note inside. "You were always right." She tossed it in the drawer, not because it hurt, but because it was too late. Apologies that only come after image loss aren't real, they're branding. That evening, she met Cale for drinks again. Same place, same booth near the back. He was already there, phone face down, whiskey in hand. She slid into the seat across from him. He raised an eyebrow. "You good?" "I'm solid, not happy." "I'm not chasing happy." He nodded. "You want steady, I want peace." He clinked his glass against hers. "Then you're winning." They didn't talk about the past. Not hers, not his. He never asked about Corin, and she never offered. Because real companionship isn't built on shared enemies, it's built on earned ease. And Cale didn't push. He matched her pace. That was new, and it mattered. Back at the estate, Corin called his assistant. "Any updates from the PR team?" "They suggest holding off on any public response. Right now the narrative is vague. You still have room to reshape it." He sighed. "What about the firm?" "They've rebranded fully. Everyone loyal to her is already gone." "Any leaks?" "None." He paused. "She's smart." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, she was always the engine. You were the face." He hung up. That line repeated in his head all night. She was the engine. You were the face. Now, the engine was gone, and the face was cracking. At her apartment, Avon made tea and curled up on her couch. She didn't watch the news, didn't refresh headlines, didn't stalk comments. She didn't need to, because power doesn't beg for proof. It just moves, and lets the world adjust. Corin refreshed his inbox again. Still no response from Avon. No reply to his message. No reaction to the return of her journal. No calls. Not even a read receipt. For a man used to controlling the room, being ignored was unfamiliar. He texted his mother instead. She won't respond. Dorel didn't wait long to reply. "You shouldn't have let it get this far." He nearly threw the phone. Everyone acted like Avon disappeared out of nowhere. No one wanted to say the truth. She didn't disappear. She simply stopped staying. Meanwhile, Avon sat in a different room. Her new conference room in Austin. Her core team was already in place. Smaller than before. Sharper. Fewer people. No fluff. She reviewed the final visuals for the rebrand. New website. New logo. Client list stripped down to only those who respected boundaries. She nodded. "It's clean." One of her designers leaned forward. "Still want to avoid the press rollout?" "Yes. Let them discover it." The team understood. She wasn't interested in public praise. She wanted quiet reach. That afternoon, 3 clients who once belonged to Corin's portfolio reached out, not to complain, to transition. One of them, an investor in early-stage startups, sent a brief email. "We're ready to go where you go. No drama necessary." Avon replied, "Welcome." No shade, no press statement, just alignment. By midweek, Avon's firm had landed 2 new contracts. One of them had declined her proposal a year ago, back when she had Corin attached to every pitch. Now, they wanted her alone. That's what happened when people finally saw the real source of the work. The credit that was once shared now had clarity, and clarity made her dangerous. Corin wasn't blind to the shift. He saw the endorsements, the reshared posts. He even heard from an old client who now only referenced Avon's version of their pitch deck. His agency felt hollow. Meetings ran shorter. His team hesitated to bring him decisions. For the first time, he wasn't the one with gravity. He was just a man sitting at the desk where she used to lead. One night, Avon sat with Cale at a rooftop lounge. No crowd, no camera phones, just music in the background. He poured wine and leaned back. Still quiet on his end? He texted twice. What did he say? Asked if I was doing this to punish him. Cale smirked. And are you? No, she said. I'm doing this to stop punishing myself. He lifted his glass. That's the only reason that matters. They clinked. By the weekend, Avon received an alert. Corin's firm had quietly withdrawn from a tech competition, the same one he'd dominated 2 years ago with her help. She didn't gloat. She didn't comment. She simply forwarded the article to her strategy lead and wrote, "Next year, this is ours. No X's, no explanations, only execution." Back in Atlanta, Darrell called Corin again. "You need to post something. Say it was mutual." He shook his head. "It wasn't. Perception is more important." Corin stared at the screen. She never even raised her voice. "That's what makes it worse," Darrell said. "She let you talk long enough to make yourself irrelevant." He didn't argue, because she was right. Avon didn't destroy him. She just stepped away and let gravity do its job. Corin sat across from his PR strategist, jaw clenched, arms folded. "They want a joint statement," the strategist said. "Soft language, focus on growth, change, new seasons. You know the type." He didn't respond. The strategist continued. "It's clean, no blame. Just mutual respect and new paths." Corin stared at the mock draft on the tablet. None of it sounded like Avon. "She'll never sign off on this. Then release your half. Make it sound balanced." He stood up. "It'll still look like I'm spinning." The strategist hesitated. "You are..." Corin walked out. Meanwhile, Avon was onboarding a new client via video. A CEO from Chicago, mid-30s, razor sharp. The kind of woman who only worked with people who moved like her. "I've followed your work for years," she said. "Didn't realize how much of it was yours until recently." Avon smiled. "That was by design, but I don't hide anymore. I'm glad. We need more of that." Their call ended with one word: alignment. It was the only word Avon cared about now. She closed her laptop and leaned back. Her phone buzzed. "Cale. Dinner tonight? My place. No pressure." She smiled, replied simply, "Yes." That evening, she arrived at Cale's apartment. Low lighting, real cooking smells, jazz humming in the background. He opened the door in a t-shirt and joggers, barefoot, no facade. "You cook?" she asked. "I breathe," he replied. "It's less impressive than it sounds." They laughed. She stepped inside, let the warmth wrap around her. It felt safe, not staged, not performative, just easy. They ate on the couch, simple pasta, wine. Avon kicked off her heels and tucked her legs under her. Cale watched her, didn't interrupt. After a while he asked, "If you could go back, would you?" To him, no. To the version of yourself that stayed. She thought for a moment. No, because she kept shrinking to make someone else seem tall. Cale nodded slowly. "And now I don't need to be seen," she said. "I just need to be respected. That's rarer than people think." She glanced at him. "Not with you." Meanwhile, Corin opened Instagram. The comment sections were changing. Avon's name was mentioned more than his. Quiet nods, reshared branding posts, clips from old panels where she'd done the explaining while he nodded along. People were connecting the dots. He wasn't losing relevance. He was being reclassified as the accessory, the man beside the brilliance. The next morning, Avon woke up to a message from a national business journal. Request for a feature. Her, not the firm. "We'd love to hear your transition story. From joint leadership to solo legacy." She responded, "No interviews, no stories, just watch." The editor replied, "Respect." She liked that word now. Corin posted a photo the next day, a throwback from the gala. Caption: Growth means knowing when to step forward and when to let go. The comments were divided. Some applauded his humility. Others read between the lines. But Avon? She didn't like, didn't comment, didn't repost. She just kept moving. That afternoon, she sat in her office reviewing projections. Her firm was set to double revenue in second quarter. No fluff, no husband, no shared photo ops. Just clean numbers and clients who trusted her alone. Her assistant knocked softly. By the way, that foundation dinner you're skipping? Corin RSVP'd solo. Avon nodded. Let them see. At 8 p.m., Corin stood at the gala bar, surrounded by noise but alone in the space that once made him feel powerful. A donor asked where Avon was. He gave a vague smile. She's focusing on something new. The donor nodded. Makes sense. She always had better instincts. Corin didn't reply, because what was left to say? Avon wasn't gone. She'd just outgrown the frame they tried to keep her in. If you've ever realized your silence was more powerful than an argument, you understand Avon's story. Share your quiet wins in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay with us as we follow her rise. This is Mr. Charles Stories, where quiet power speaks the loudest. Avon hadn't expected dinner with Cale to feel like ease, not after everything she'd peeled herself out of. But it did. He didn't hover. He didn't flatter. He didn't ask her to relive what she had survived, just to prove she was strong. He just asked what she liked to eat. What kind of pasta? He asked, standing at his stove in a black t-shirt and bare feet. She leaned against the counter. The kind with garlic and peace. He smirked. I can manage garlic. They ate in silence for a while. The kind of silence that wasn't awkward, just shared. The kind of silence that reminded Avon how loud her life used to be, with empty words. Forced dinners, charity galas that masked resentment under tailored tuxedos. Cale didn't speak to fill the space. He gave it room to breathe, and that was what made her stay a little longer than planned. After dinner, he poured wine. No rush. She kicked off her shoes. He handed her a glass and sat on the couch, angled toward her but not pressed. You always this calm? She asked. Not always. Just with people who don't make me pretend. She met his gaze. So you've pretended before, haven't we all? She nodded once. I'm still unlearning that. What part? The part where I make myself smaller to keep things smooth. Cale didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked, You ever feel like you left before you physically did? All the time, she replied. The day I stopped defending him in front of his mother was the day I started leaving. Cale sipped. You didn't want to fix it? I tried. For years, but I learned you can't fix what someone pretends isn't broken. He nodded. That's the kind of lesson that costs time. And quiet. She set her wine down. You ever been married? No. But I've been needed for the wrong reasons. Like what? Image, access, safety. Not love? Love's easy to say, hard to prove. That landed. She didn't reply for a long moment. Then finally said, That's the first honest thing I've heard in a while. He didn't move closer. She appreciated that. Affection wasn't earned by sympathy. It was earned by respect, and that he gave freely. Later, as she prepared to leave, he walked her to the elevator. No hand grab, no lingering invitation, just get home safe. And you don't have to perform here. She smiled, small but real. Then got in the elevator, doors closed, heart lighter. Not because someone wanted her, but because someone saw her. The next day, she worked early, back-to-back calls, investor deck edits, staff feedback on rollout materials. She thrived in it. That was the part of herself Corin never respected. Her love of control, her obsession with precision. He called it rigid. Cale called it rare. By afternoon, her assistant brought in lunch and said, Your Thursday client signed. Full annual retainer. Avon leaned back. Another one from the old pipeline? Yup. Said they followed you, not the brand. Avon smiled faintly. That's becoming a theme. They also asked if you're doing press yet. No, Avon replied. Not unless it serves something larger. What about the podcast? Avon shook her head. No panel, no interviews, not yet. Her assistant tilted her head. What are you waiting for? Avon didn't hesitate. For the noise to stop. I'm not here to fight for attention. I'm here to outlast it. Across the city, Corin stood in a board meeting. 2 seats empty. Both belonged to directors who'd once been brought in by Avon. Now gone. One sent an email to everyone that morning, copying him directly. Nothing against the current direction. I simply prefer working with leaders who listen. It wasn't just a departure. It was a mirror. And it stung. Corin left the meeting early. Didn't say much. Didn't need to. His absence said enough. That night, Avon sat by her window with a tea she steeped too long, scrolling through her own calendar. A message popped up. From Cale. Still thinking about the garlic and peace. She laughed. Typed back. Round 2. His reply. Always. They met again that weekend. Same rooftop apartment. Same calm energy. But this time, Avon brought the wine. Still no garlic. Cale teased. Tonight's about stories, she said, placing the bottle on his counter. Not sauce. He poured for both of them, then leaned against the sink. So, stories, Avon nodded. But not the kind people beg to hear. The kind no one ever asks about. Cale took a slow sip. Fair. I'll go first. She watched him. He didn't look away. When I was 29, I spent 2 years building a tech product that failed. Not because it didn't work, because I gave power to people who didn't understand my vision. She tilted her head. What'd you learn? That being liked isn't the same as being respected. Avon's face softened. That's familiar. He nodded toward her. Your turn. She breathed in. When Corin and I first started, I thought we were building something side by side. But somewhere along the way, I started laying bricks while he just posed for the photos. And you still stayed? For a while, yes. I thought marriage meant patience. But patience without boundaries turns into self-abandonment. Cale blinked slowly. That's heavier than garlic. Avon smiled, then sipped. Told you this wasn't a pasta night. Later, they sat near the balcony, not outside, just in the open doorway where the breeze met the edge of comfort. Cale looked at her. Do you think you'll ever do it again? Marriage? He nodded. She didn't rush the answer. If it looks like this, quiet, honest and safe, maybe. He didn't ask more, didn't offer his own opinion, just nodded once, then handed her a folded throw blanket as the wind picked up. No assumptions, no performance, just attention. And that felt new. The next morning, Avon met with her design lead to finalize the client dashboard interface. But halfway through the meeting, the woman paused and asked gently, Is it weird to say you look lighter? Avon glanced up from her laptop. Lighter? Yeah, like you're not holding a breath anymore. Avon thought for a second. I'm not. The designer smiled. It suits you. Across town, Corin sat in another meeting he wasn't leading. His presence felt tolerated now, not requested. He tried to steer the agenda. Someone redirected it. When he mentioned Avon's name, not to blame but to reference, the room stiffened. One man cleared his throat. We're not going backwards, Corin. That was the moment he realized something. Her silence didn't just make him irrelevant. It made him replaceable. Back in her apartment, Avon answered an unexpected call. The voice on the other end was a magazine editor, one she'd once declined 3 times. We want to do a piece on rebuilders, founders who started over. You'd lead the series. Avon's instinct was to say no. But this time, she paused. Send me the angle. You'd control the language, no scandal. Just the work. She thought again, then replied, make it short, real, and not about him. Understood. Maybe this was the right kind of noise. That evening, she texted Cale. Dinner soon. He replied a minute later. Only if you bring the blanket this time. And garlic. Deal. She smiled at the screen, then locked her phone. Not everything had to be a statement. Some things were just real. And that was enough. The phone rang at 7:42 a.m. Avon didn't pick it up. She let it ring. Let the screen flash Dorel Valmir twice before sending it to voicemail. 3 minutes later, another call. This time, she answered, but didn't speak first. Dorel's voice cut through the line. You've embarrassed this family long enough. Avon blinked slowly, still seated on her kitchen stool, one hand around her mug of warm tea. She said, nothing. Dorel continued, voice sharp, words clipped. I tolerated your ambition. I tolerated the headlines. But what you've done, Avon interrupted softly, you tolerated my presence. Never my position. Dorel paused. Excuse me? You treated me like an ornament that looked good next to Corin. Not a partner, not a builder. You're making a mess out of nothing, Dorel snapped. You think these people care about your firm. They're watching for you to fall, and you're handing it to them. No, Avon said, plainly. I just stopped handing it to you. A beat of silence. Dorel's voice dropped lower. He's ruined. Do you understand that? Without you, the press wants blood. His investors want out. His staff has no direction. Then maybe you should have respected the engine while it was running. You're being cold. I'm being finished. Dorel hung up. Avon set the phone down, calmly. No shake in her hands. No flare in her chest. That was the thing about women like Dorel. They relied on panic, on chaos, on keeping you emotional so you'd stay quiet. Avon wasn't emotional anymore. She was focused. By noon, a reporter called her assistant. Not for gossip, for confirmation. We heard from another source that Avon will not return to any of the legacy brands she was once attached to. Can we confirm that she's done with public appearances connected to the Valmir name? The assistant replied with one line. She's building forward, not backward. The reporter nodded, thanked her, and clicked off. That quote would go viral, not for drama, but for clarity. Avon spent her afternoon on a strategy call, pitching a quiet campaign for a wellness startup. The founder had reached out directly. I want your brain, your style, your boundaries, she'd said. Avon liked that. Not your look, not your following, just the work. They signed the contract before the call ended. Later, she found a delivery at her door. A square box, black ribbon. Inside, a framed print of one of her earliest campaign designs, the one Corin once said was too bold for legacy clients. Taped to the back was a card. They want bold now. No signature. But, she knew, someone from that dinner, someone who saw. She smiled, placed it on her shelf, next to her original journal, right where it belonged. That night, she lit a single candle, poured a glass of still water, and sat with her laptop. No messages from Corin, no calls from Dorel, no buzz from old press friends trying to get the real story. Only silence. And peace. It was no longer uncomfortable. It was deserved. Cale texted at 8:04 p.m. Still good for Friday? She typed back, absolutely, then closed the laptop and looked out over her balcony. The skyline didn't judge her. It had seen everything and stayed neutral. That's how she planned to be now. Unbothered by whispers, unshaken by calls, and unmoved by people who only loved her in public. Friday came fast. Avon didn't wear anything loud. Just a simple emerald silk blouse, fitted slacks, and the same nude heels she wore the day she signed her first major contract. Her makeup was clean. Her lips bare. Her hair tied back. She wasn't dressing to impress anyone. She was dressing like she owned her air. The restaurant was in a quiet part of downtown. Not flashy. Just elegant. Cale stood when she arrived. Not out of show, but out of instinct. He didn't reach for her chair. He didn't comment on her appearance like it was unexpected. He simply said, "Glad you made it." Avon nodded. "Glad you asked." They sat, ordered. The night moved smoothly. Their conversation didn't revolve around Corin, her past firm, or the headlines. It was about ideas, brands, strategy. Why silence is often more powerful than spectacle. At one point, Cale leaned back and said, "You do know what you've done is rare." Avon sipped her drink. "Which part?" "Most people wait for the scandal to explode. You left while the lie was still tidy." She smiled. "Scandals stain the clean. I walked before they could make me look messy." His eyes didn't flash with approval. They rested in respect. "That's not survival," he said. "That's clarity." After dinner, they didn't linger in front of the valet line. Cale walked her to her car. No dramatic goodbyes. No pressure to do this again. But he did say one thing before she opened the door. "If you ever want to build something that's only yours, not attached to any legacy, call me. I'll back it." She didn't blink, didn't giggle, didn't deflect. She said, "Thank you," got in, and drove away. The next morning, she woke to another headline. Avon Delaney spotted with Cale Dawn. New power duo in the works. She didn't call her PR rep, didn't ask for edits. Let them talk, let them guess. This time, the narrative wasn't being shaped by Dorell or Corin's team. It was being shaped by her silence. And they couldn't spin that. At noon, Corin called. She didn't pick up. 2 hours later, he texted, "We need to talk. Please." Still, she didn't reply. Not because she wanted him to hurt, but because she was done patching the hole he kept making. He wasn't sorry for the betrayal. He was sorry for the exposure. There's a difference. By evening, she got a message from her former assistant, Ivy. "Your old office is a mess. He can't even remember how to lock his calendar." Avon laughed. Typed back, "Hire a new one. He'll figure it out." Ivy replied, "I already joined you in Austin, didn't you notice?" Avon blinked, checked her Slack. There Ivy was, already on the shared workspace, already drafting onboarding docs, already handling what needed to be handled. She smiled. One by one, the pieces that mattered were coming to her, willingly, not out of pity, but because people could feel where the real power was now. And it didn't wear Corin's last name. Dorell sent an email. Short, terse. "When you've made your point, call me. I'll arrange your re-entry. We'll rebrand this as a creative sabbatical." Avon didn't respond. She moved the email to a folder labeled Delusion, then booked a lunch with the founder of the new wellness brand she'd signed, and followed that with a call to a creative director she'd once mentored. Each connection, real. Each opportunity, earned. No shadows. No lies. Just direction. That weekend, she took a walk alone by Ladybird Lake. No cameras, no expectations. Just the sound of her steps and the weightlessness that comes when you stop holding up someone else's ego. Her phone buzzed once. She checked. It was Cale. A single text. "Next week. Let's talk legacy." She smiled, then tucked her phone away. Let them whisper. She had work to do. By Monday morning, Dorell held a press meeting. It wasn't grand, just a private media breakfast with 3 longtime reporters and 1 camera. Crew, trusted allies who had once painted the Delaney name with prestige. She wore her signature pearl brooch, her tone, cold and clean. "I've always supported Avon. What she's going through is unfortunate," she said. "We're hopeful she'll come home to the firm." It sounded warm, but it was a warning. They were framing her as emotional, temporary, out of control. Avon watched the clip while sipping from a white mug in her new downtown apartment, the one she bought herself, the one no one co-signed. She smiled, paused the screen, zoomed in. Dorell's brooch was crooked. That same morning, Ivy sent over the first round of mood boards for Avon's new brand consultancy, Quarry and North. The tagline, clean cuts, quiet edges, brands that last. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be. 3 clients had already paid deposits without seeing a single campaign. Because word had gotten out, Avon wasn't just rebranding. She was rebuilding, and not alone. Meanwhile, Corin tried to contact her 3 more times. Voicemails, texts, a letter even. None of them said, "I'm sorry." All of them said, "Let's fix this." But Avon had no interest in fixing something that was always cracked. She'd already repaired herself. That was enough. The tipping point came midweek. A mid-tier publication leaked footage from inside Dorell's firm. It wasn't Avon who leaked it. It wasn't Ivy either. It was someone who'd been in the office the day Avon left. A junior designer who'd watched her walk out with no tears, no words. Just her ID badge set gently on the reception desk. The footage showed Dorell shouting at staff, saying Avon's name like it was a curse, calling her ungrateful and replaceable. The video spread fast. The internet doesn't care for power when it smells desperation. Suddenly, the story shifted. Avon wasn't emotional. She was strategic. She wasn't bitter. She was brave. And Dorell? She was exposed. Cale called that evening. No fluff. He asked, "You ready to take on legacy clients?" Avon said, "If they're ready to listen." He laughed softly. "They're begging." She met him again. This time, not for dinner. It was in a private boardroom with 3 founders from a health tech brand. Young, ambitious, on the edge of scaling. They laid out their decks, their data, their vision, then asked her what she thought. She didn't speak for 5 minutes. She reviewed, scrolled, made a few notes, then said, "You're selling fear. Let's sell freedom instead." The room went still. Cale just leaned back and nodded. The lead founder grinned. "You're hired." Outside, Cale offered her a deal. "I'll fund the next 6 months of Quarry and North. No strings." She looked at him, not through him, not past him, at him, and said, "No." He blinked. "No?" She added, "If I let you fund me, it becomes your win too. This one's mine." He didn't argue, didn't press, just said, "I'll refer then." Quietly, that she accepted. Respect was currency, and Cale knew how to spend it wisely. By the end of the week, Avon had 5 active projects, not flashy, not viral, but real, earned, backed by people who respected what she brought into a room, not who she came with. At night, she walked the quiet halls of her apartment, barefoot, windows open. She didn't blast music. She didn't light candles. She just moved, steady, calm, clear. She no longer needed to prove she was okay. She was. And every time the phone rang with someone asking her to come back, she let it ring out. Because she wasn't going back. She was going forward. By Friday morning, Quarry and North trended on business Twitter, not because Avon promoted it, but because one of her clients, a mental health startup, launched their new campaign with a quiet message. "Our founder burned out pretending to be everything. Now we choose peace." Thanks to the woman who reminded us that silence can speak louder than applause. Avon's name wasn't even in the post, but it was in the comments. One wrote, "She left a whisper and it moved the whole room." Another, "Remember when they said she was overreacting? This is what strategy looks like." That afternoon, Ela posted a photo. New nails, new hair. Caption, "No one talks about what it's like to be the one left behind while the world claps for the woman who broke things." It was vague, but everyone knew who she meant. The comments turned on her. One said, "You weren't left behind. You were exposed." Another, "Actions have consequences, babe." She didn't break it. She just stopped cleaning your mess. Ela turned off comments by sunset. Dorell made one more call. It went to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She didn't need to. Avon had already answered, with her absence. That weekend, Avon took a slow drive, not to run away, just to breathe. No makeup, no calls, just her. She passed through an old stretch of town where she once lived in a studio before meeting Corin. No elevator, no fancy title, just a space she made her own. And it reminded her, she'd always been whole. She just let someone convince her that she wasn't. Sunday night, Cale invited her to a jazz bar downtown. Low lights, no cameras. He didn't compliment her dress, He complimented her choice of wine. He didn't brag about her work. He asked how she was sleeping. She said, "Better," and he nodded. "Good." When the music dipped low, he said, "You didn't just leave. You redefined the terms." Avon smiled. "Took me long enough." "You needed proof first?" "No. I needed peace first." By midnight, they walked side by side to the car lot. Cale didn't reach for her hand. He didn't hover, but at the door, he paused. Said, "If I wanted to see you again, would I need a pitch deck or just courage?" She smiled, a real one. "Just respect." "Already done," he said. When she got home, the lights from the city flickered through her glass wall. She didn't miss the mansion. She didn't miss the appearances. She didn't even miss the routine. What she missed were the parts of herself she'd pushed aside to keep someone else's legacy alive. Now, she had her own. That week, a magazine requested a feature. They didn't want Corin's ex. They wanted Avon Delaney, founder of Quarry and North. She didn't send in glam shots. She submitted a photo taken at a community panel. No filters, no styling team. Just her speaking, calm and confident, in front of 20 local founders. The headline read, "She didn't yell. She just walked away," and everyone noticed. Back in the city, Corin sat across from his PR rep. Another campaign, another rebranding strategy, another plea to shift the narrative. But it didn't stick. Because image without substance fades fast, and Avon's substance had finally been seen. That Thursday, Avon walked into a local women's business forum to give her first keynote. No stage lights, no red carpet, just a mic and a quiet room of women who'd lived their own versions of her story. She didn't open with statistics. She opened with this: sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not explain. They listened, and this time, no one whispered. 1 month passed, and the world didn't stop spinning. It adjusted. Magazines that once put Avon next to Corin now called her name on its own. Delaney rises, Avon's pivot, from +1 to powerhouse. But she didn't sit around soaking it in, because praise was never her currency. Peace was. Quarry and North wasn't trying to go viral. They weren't chasing trends or launching dramatic campaigns. They built clean, efficient, ethical, and the clients that came were different. Not just big, but intentional. Startups with missions, founders with humility, companies who didn't ask her to fix their story, but invited her to build it with them. One of her favorites was a housing nonprofit in East Austin, run by a woman named Leora. Sharp, unapologetically kind, grit without the noise. Avon helped her secure national backing after a single strategy session. After the press conference, Leora hugged her and said, "I've been in meetings where I had to prove I wasn't invisible. This time, they saw me before I spoke. You did that." Avon smiled. "I didn't do that. You just didn't let them forget you." On a quiet Saturday, Cale invited her to a rooftop event. No suits, no forced laughs, just local business owners, live music, and real food. She wore jeans, low heels, hair up. He wore a linen shirt and a watch that didn't scream status. They stood by the railing as the sunset hit the buildings. Cale nodded at the skyline. "Ever think about how fast everything used to feel?" Avon glanced over. "Now I make time slow down." "Good. Some people never learn that." "I almost didn't." When she turned toward him, he was already watching. Not in a possessive way, in an observant one. She liked that about him. He didn't fill silence. He made space in it. "Do you think peace lasts?" she asked. "No, but the people who choose it tend to rebuild faster when it breaks." She thought on that, and nodded. Later that night, Cale offered to drive her home. In the car, they didn't talk about work, or plans, or futures. They just rode with the windows cracked and the hum of a quiet playlist in the background. When they reached her apartment, he didn't ask to come up. He stepped out, walked her to the door, and waited. She turned to him and said, "You've been patient." He smiled. Wasn't hard. Why? Because I wasn't waiting for you to heal for me. I was waiting for you to breathe for you. That answer? It undid a knot she didn't know she'd been holding. She leaned forward. Just close enough. He didn't rush in. She kissed him. Slow. Sure. Simple. Then pulled back and said, "Thank you." He nodded. "Any time." She didn't call her friends to say, "It's official." She didn't post a photo with a cryptic caption. She didn't need the world to know anything. She needed to feel everything. And she did. On Sunday, she walked into her office alone, looked at the framed quote near her desk. Protect your peace, then scale it. It wasn't just a reminder. It was her model now. The next day, Corin emailed her. No threats, no apologies. Just a 3-line message. "I hope you're doing well. You were always the backbone. I see that now." She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Because Avon had already answered in the one way people never expected. She left. With grace. With strategy. With purpose. And with no desire to look back. The invitation came in a thick envelope. Cream-colored, embossed, traditional. Dorell's script-style signature in silver foil. Ashford Foundation Winter Gala. Avon smiled as she set it on the counter. The same event where she once stood on the sidelines, smile rehearsed, hand in Corin's arm. Listening to whispers about who wore it best and whose marriage was holding steady. But now, she didn't need to attend. She'd already become the conversation. 2 days before the event, she got a call. Not from Dorell, not from Isla. From a young intern at a local media outlet. "Miss Delaney, I know you don't usually do interviews, but I wanted to ask what made you rebuild your company with no public statement, no press run, no expose?" Avon paused, then answered gently. "Because people only listen to silence when it walks out with its head high." On the night of the gala, she didn't dress for attention. She wore a dark green gown, simple lines, open back, no jewels. Cale walked in with her. No fanfare, but when they entered, every camera turned, not because she was loud, but because she hadn't been seen in person since she left. And yet, she looked freer, richer in presence, not just purse. Corin was there, of course, standing with his PR team, nodding to sponsors, smiling like nothing broke. His eyes caught her, and there it was again, that stunned pause. Not from heartbreak, from awareness. She had rebuilt everything he thought she'd lose, and hadn't dragged him in the process. She just stepped around him. Dorell approached mid-event, holding a glass she hadn't sipped. "You didn't please reply." Avon nodded. "I didn't need to. This could have been an olive branch. I'm not planting in burnt soil." Dorell tilted her head. "You've changed." "No," Avon said calmly. "I just stopped clapping for the wrong audience." Cale returned with 2 drinks, offered her one, held her hand, didn't interrupt. Dorell walked off, and didn't return. Later that night, a young couple stopped Avon on the steps outside. The woman looked nervous. "Miss Delaney, sorry to bother you, but we've been following your story. My fiancé, he used to say I needed to tone it down to be taken seriously. After what you did, he says I should run the whole firm." The man beside her chuckled. "She's sharper than anyone I know." Avon smiled. "Then don't apologize for it. Just own it." They thanked her and walked on. Cale looked over. "You just changed their story." She shrugged. "They'll write their own." I just turned the page. That night, back at her apartment, Cale cooked. He didn't order in. Didn't ask what she wanted. He just made lemon pasta with roasted garlic and poured her wine. When they sat on the balcony, the city buzzing softly below, he asked, "Do you miss it? The old life?" He nodded. "No. I miss the version of me that used to think I had to ask permission." He leaned back. "I'm glad she left." "So am I." They clinked glasses. The next morning, she opened her journal. Same leather-bound one from the night she came home to silence. She flipped to that page. "I'm done being the reason he looks respectable." And beneath it, she wrote a new line. I'm now the reason I look peaceful. She didn't post it online. She didn't quote herself in an article. She lived it every day. Because Avon Delaney didn't come back. She never left. She just stopped standing in front of people who liked her quieter. And now, the world finally heard her without her raising her voice. If you've ever walked away from something quietly, only to rebuild louder with your actions, this story was for you. Avon didn't scream. She didn't post revenge quotes. She just moved with purpose, power, and peace. Now it's your turn. Tell us in the comments, what lines stood out to you most? Like this video if you believe quiet strength is still strength. Share this with someone who needs a reminder. You don't owe the world your silence to keep someone else's image clean. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, where every tale leaves a lesson.